Okay, hello all.
Hello.
Brittany's here, Anne Marie's here. Oh dear, Sadie.
Yeah, because I listened to our recording and it totally is super loud. The
Is
like
it?
repeat, yeah.
What is that?
Oh, wait, there's Sadie.
Okay, is this better?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
You guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, let's do it super quick before it goes weird again.
Okay, so who wants to facilitate?
What?
Who wants to facilitate conversation?
Oh, I can. Are we
Take
just
it away.
each go around and talk about the parents that we interviewed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we each have about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to talk about our interview. I think we should introduce ourselves too, just to say hello, and then we can just go from there. I have the instructions here that we can refer to also.
Okay, well, do you want to facilitate this?
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so if you want me to start, Anne Marie Hammond. I interviewed some friends that I have with multiple kids, and my interview was kind of interesting because in the beginning, the first couple of questions asking about what their kids were like when they were first growing up, the mom was just pretty adamant on how they were all exactly the same. They all did the same things at the same time. They walked early, they talked early. The only thing that she really said that she noticed was that her oldest son took longer to potty train than the rest of them. And then, but she was pretty set on that they all did everything at the same time. But then as we started talking about it more and like the different, different ways that the kids learn and the multiple intelligences like we're talking about, and just talking about kids in general, she started saying, oh, well, actually, I think my younger kids took longer to talk because my older kids would do all the talking for them. And so it took her, like, youngest daughter, she said, a few months longer to actually start talking in full sentences because the oldest boy would just jump in and say, oh, she's trying to say this, Mom, because she wants a drink or she wants a snack. And so she said that had a really big impact on her youngest. And she said that they never really noticed any differences, but when her oldest two got into school, they had a lot of struggles in school and they couldn't figure out why, and they constantly struggled. And it took a few years for a teacher to recommend that they go have them tested, and they both had ADHD. And so that really impacted, obviously, how they both learned in school and being able to focus. And the oldest boy, they chose to medicate both of them. But in addition to having their oldest on medication, he had to be right up front by the teacher and have a lot of attention on him is what helped him to learn and to be able to focus on the teacher. And she had to give him a lot of one-on-one attention. And they said that he really improved a lot from the time that he got on medication at the first of the year, just until like the middle of the year. There was a huge academic increase for him. And then it was a few more years after that that he started having new problems, I guess. They wouldn't really go into depth as to what those problems were, but just said that he started having more problems at school, and they recommended him go to a counselor. And then they found out that he had that he was high functioning autism. And so then when she said that they realized that, she said that she could look back and kind of notice more a difference of him growing up compared to their other kids. So this one example that she shared is using the bathroom. He always wanted to go outside. He had a hard time going inside, and they never understood that. And he was their only boy. The others were girls. And they said that they kind of just assumed it was because he was a boy and wanted to go outside. But it was because he had, I guess, issues with the bathroom. And they never realized that as a problem or an issue until he was diagnosed with the high functioning autism. And then they said that they were able to look back and notice a lot of differences from him and their other three. And so I think it just kind of was interesting to hear that. I think while kids have their own learning styles and techniques that work best for them, I think that parents have to recognize that too. And until you can like recognize their learning style and techniques and what works best for them, it's not going to matter what their learning style is. And I think you just have to be really willing to look at each child as an individual and figure out what works best for them, if that makes sense. But I think it was really interesting that she said in the beginning that they thought all their kids were exactly the same until he had that diagnosis. And then she said once they said that, we were able to go back through and say, oh no, that was different, that was different. And I just wonder if maybe it was them not, I don't want to say not willing, because they're good parents, but maybe unable to see their kids differently and to know and understand that they do learn in different ways, and each kid, even though coming from the same home, same environment, can have different learning styles that work best for them. Anyway, so that was kind of the gist of our conversation. It was pretty interesting. They said for future long terms, they don't really feel like him having autism is going to be something that is a problem for him for his life. They feel like he'll still be able to move out on his own. It will just obviously take him a longer time than the rest of their kids. And they said that they're okay with that because they're actually getting along with him better now, and it's improved their relationships as he's like getting older and closer to teens. It's improving their relationships now that they have a better understanding of him, and they're finding new ways to work with him. And they feel like he will be one day prepared to go out on his own, just obviously later than most people. So anyway, that was about it.
That's awesome.
So who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
So I don't have access to a family that has special needs, so I just did one of my family members. So they live in Canada, and the mom is French and the dad's English, and they have 4 girls. And so I just was talking with her about like the differences, and she said that what's funny is that the oldest so she has 3 younger, the 3 younger girls were pretty much the same. They pulled themselves up at the same time, they all walked, and they all started talking at the same time, but the oldest was different from the 3 other ones. She, when it came to pulling herself up and walking and potty training, she was a lot quicker than the other 3 were, but when it came to speaking, she actually was a lot slower than the other 3. That is because her dad served his mission French speaking, and so they spoke French to her till she was about 5. But the thing is she lives in Toronto, which is English speaking, and so it just kind of, I don't know if it was like her brain function or what, is just she had trouble actually speaking one language, and English being that. And so she didn't actually start really speaking till she was 3. And her siblings, her 3 other sisters, were actually at 2. So it's just interesting to learn that languages actually can influence like the development of speech for children, no matter how old they are. So they have some people in her ward that actually have children that are special needs. And they are in nursery and primary. And she says working with them, it's very different because you have to be very patient with them, just because they do have they function differently. They are a lot hyper and have a harder time like sitting down and listening, or have their own way of doing things. And so she said that you have to be very patient and loving towards them. They love hugs, and that it's important to show that to them, that you care about them, because it actually affects them if you don't show that love, because they want that hug. They need that affection towards them. And so they're like, oh, why don't you want to give me a hug? And so it's very important for them to know that you care and that you're willing to give that hug to them. One of their child's, I guess you could call it special needs. I guess kind of. She's dyslexic, and found out she was dyslexic in 2nd grade. And they had actually noticed that she was having a hard time reading and just comprehending and remembering the things that she was reading. And so they had her take her test, and then they found out she was dyslexic. And so what they did is every week she would meet with the other group of students and just go to a little class to help work on her reading and reading comprehension. But now that she's older, she's in high school, she actually doesn't have any issues. She actually does really well in English, able to develop those skills to be able to comprehend the things that she's reading and remember those things. I think that's it when we talk. It was just interesting because I thought going into this, I was like, oh, I'm sure every child's different no matter in their development. There's some way, but actually they weren't as different.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So did they not speak French when with the other 2 girls like they did with their first, or?
Not as much, no.
Okay.
Because my family's the same way. So my parents speak French, and my parents spoke French to me also, just like my aunt did with all my cousins, or did with her older cousin, or my older cousin. And so my parents didn't speak French to my brothers.
Did you talk at a quicker later?
I was actually pretty similar. I think I was closer to 3, but I was still 2, so I wasn't as slow as she was. Okay. But it wasn't as bad because my little brother, my parents spoke just French to my little brother, and then my other siblings spoke English to him, and he didn't have any issue with it.
It's interesting.
Which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, Samantha and I are actually in the same language literacy class, and our teacher talks a lot about if you're going to introduce your child to a second language, to do it in early childhood, really early. And I asked her, I was like, I knew someone who the mom spoke Japanese and the dad spoke English. He met her on his mission, and she was so confused that she was delayed in her speech, and she didn't speak for a long time because she was like, do I speak this? Do I speak that? What is this? What is that? And it was confusing. And I asked my teacher that, Sister Hawks, and she was like, oh no, that doesn't happen. But I guess it does.
It does. It just depends on the kids too, because I know another family where they all speak French and they grew up speaking French, but they moved to an English area a couple years ago. But both their kids they have 3 or 4. All their kids are bilingual in French and English, and they haven't had any issues. So I think it just depends too on maybe on the family background or genetics or brain function kind of a thing, if it affects them or if it doesn't, kind of a thing.
Very interesting.
All right, Maddie, you want to be up?
Care if I go so I can head out a few minutes early?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Sorry, it's some technical difficulties, but so I interviewed a mom. She had 3 girls. It was interesting because she said that they all walked around 9 to 10 months, all 3 of them. They're kind of all the same. Talked around the same time. They both spoke the first word, which of course was dada. But I thought it was interesting that when she was potty training them, the middle child and the youngest child, they were about the same. They about the same age. They but then the oldest, when she was potty training, she was really bad about it because of her younger sister. She was really sick all the time, and so a lot of the focus was on the younger sister, and so she just kind of forgot everything that she learned. She trained because she was 2 when the younger sister was born. And something that I thought was interesting that me and Maddie also learned in our child literacy class is that our teacher talks about how chronic ear infections affect the child later on in life, like spelling and like different oh my gosh, I can't think of the word. Like they can't say different sounds and stuff. And so the middle child, she had chronic ear infections from the time that she was born until she was about 2.5. And she actually almost went deaf in her left ear, so they're pretty serious. And the mom said that she's had trouble spelling like all of her life. She's in high school now, and it's just something that she hasn't been able to do because she was able to hear those sounds from an early age. So it's had a huge impact on her life. And just like speaking different words, like they don't come out right because she never learned like the phonics of them. Yeah. And then, so I talked to the mom about her schoolwork. She is a secretary in an elementary school, and none of her kids had any special needs or anything other than the girl that couldn't spell and stuff. So in her elementary school, she's like the favorite secretary. And so a lot of the kids will come up to her desk, and she works a lot with some that have like developmental delays and stuff. And when I asked her if she was ever nervous or anything the first time, she was like, oh no, I just felt a lot of love and compassion for them. And like, they've kind of grown to be like her second kids, I guess is what she was saying. Like, they just love her and she loves them. And like that relationship and the bond that they have is replaceable and something that she'll always be. Yeah, the opportunity to learn more about them and to question for develop, like, yeah, that was about it. Sorry, I feel like I just threw that all on your guys' faces.
No. Great.
All right, you
Good
guys
job.
cool if I head out? Sorry, I feel bad.
No, that's that's fine. You're kind of cutting out anyway now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's no
Okay.
problem. We'll just summarize it at the end, and you've already put in your 2 cents. So thank you so much, Samantha.
Perfect. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, Sadie or Maddie, who wants to go?
I can go.
Okay.
I work at a daycare. I talk to one of the moms about like. Is it? Yeah, I feel like the microphone's really weird.
It is just a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so I talked to one of the moms at the daycare about like some of her sons. And so she has an older son who's 9 years old and a younger one who's 5. And so I just talked to her about like, like the different like development. And so she talked about how she did see how her younger son like hit like the milestones, like his first steps and his first words a lot faster than like the older son. And when I asked her why, she like talked about like how she thought since like it was her first son, so she probably like babied him a lot more. They tend to like pick up your kid instead of like letting him walk a little bit more. And then also like since the younger son would see his older brother running around all the time, she thought he was like like trying to catch up. And so I thought that made sense. They also like they weren't. I didn't have access to like a family with like special needs, but when I did talk to her about like experience like with special needs kids, she talked about a boy in her ward who was severely autistic and like how she was like she taught him in Sunday school and he was always like wanting to participate and like very outgoing and fun, and so she thought it was really cool to like be able to like work with him. And yeah, both her sons didn't really have any special needs or disabilities. One of her younger son did have some like attention problems, and like it's just been kind of new lately. And so she's been thinking to get him tested to see if he has ADHD if it worsens. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty quick. I didn't really get to talk to her very long, but I just thought it was interesting when she was talking about like the different milestones they hit with her younger and older son. And I thought it made a lot of sense, like seeing your son trying to like catch up to his older brother. Yeah, that's about it. Pretty fast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Maddie.
Yes. Well, so for my interview, I just posted on Facebook, and I was just like, I need someone to interview with the parent who has a child with special needs, preferably, or someone, just a parent with a child who's, you guys know the criteria. And one of my, she's basically my second mom. I grew up in Tennessee, and she was my young women's leader and my seminary teacher up until I left. And it was a very emotional, honestly, interview. So she has um, she has 4 kids now. So at the time, she had a daughter and then a son. And so she had these 2 children, and then she adopted a son. And I put in the little type up, I'll just say his name is Jake. Yeah, Jake. And so she adopted Jake when he was 21 months old, I believe. And so he was just under 2. And I remember seeing him bounced around in my branch because they were trying to find a family for him to go to. And so I remember seeing him with another family, and then I remember seeing him with multiple families, and then he finally ended up with this family. Well, so she said that she adopted him at 21 months, and they were unaware of any problems that he had. And it wasn't until, I think it was, she said, a month after they adopted him that there was an episode where something happened, and it would seem like something that a normal child would do, but the way she described it was, she could tell by the way that his face was and his actions that there was something very, very, very wrong. And then after a couple weeks, this was continuing. And so she finally called the social worker, and she described what was happening. And he was like, your child has reactive attachment disorder, so RAD, which I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up. I don't believe RAD is on the autism spectrum. It's a common disorder that has to do with relationships and fear of, like, I don't really know the exact extent. Is anyone familiar with RAD?
I've heard it before.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah, it's really common in children who are adopted, just because like in this case with Jake, he was bounced around to so many houses that he was like, who am I going to stay with, and who is my real family? And so that reactive, the attachment is just like messed up. And so that's what that disorder is. I know that it's a special need. I would say that it's probably considered an emotional disturbance or something like that. It's not autism, but anyways, so she noticed that she first noticed that he had a special need with that episode. As for physical development, she said that he was, by the age of 2, he was unable to eat any solid foods. He had never had solid foods before. He was still on a bottle, and whenever they would give him food, like a solid food, he would like use his tongue and like swish it around in his mouth, and he just wasn't able to eat, and he was starving because of that. He didn't have that motion, and like those muscles in his mouth, they weren't developed because no one just ever took the time to help him, and he wasn't able to do that. At 21 months old, he could not walk. He could walk a couple steps, but that was it. That's just under 2, and he still wasn't able to walk. Potty training, they said that they were finally able to potty train him. I think they said around 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, which is very late. Let me put this to the side so I can see what all I was supposed to do. What else was there? So basically, the younger son, her biological son, they were about the same age. I think he was about 2 or 3 months older than Jake. But the lady that I interviewed, she said that Jake always had it out for that other son. He had like a constant target on him, and he was just all the time just like on his case and trying to make his life miserable. And even to this day, so Jake is actually 14 now, but it's still like, it still counts, whatever. Sorry, I'm like trying to think of what else I talked to her about. It was like an hour-long conversation. So as for cognitive development, he was always behind. He was always delayed. So she decided not to put him into public school at all. She taught him at home. She did home preschool. She did just homeschool for his entire life, and he continues to do so now. She gave me an example of how preschool went in her home. She was doing a preschool, and she was trying to teach the concept of end, and it took him 3.5 weeks to finally get it. And then all of a sudden, it clicked for him, and he finally could understand it. And that delay has happened throughout his entire life. Right now, he's 14. He's 14 right now, and he has the mind of a 12-year-old. And that delay, that cognitive delay, has happened throughout his whole life. It's gotten smaller, but it's still pretty large. She mentioned how it's just been really, really hard on the family because she described it as loving a child who basically hates you. He has fear all the time of being moved. She said that anytime an adult comes into the room, he can't focus. He has this anxiety and this penetrating fear that he's going to be taken away again because of how many times he was bounced around. And he was a baby. He was an infant when he was bounced around so much, but it still has that detrimental effect on him even today. And so that's one of the big reasons why she homeschooled him. But she is so thankful. All of her children, her biological children, she had one more child after him, have learned so much from him, and they don't have any problems, emotional problems because of it, which is really great. I'm thankful for it. It's been really tough for her. She even mentioned she doesn't know how her marriage lasted throughout it. Oh, I forgot to mention she's a psychologist, and the husband is a physician, and so they're a very well-off family, and she's very educated in the field of psychology, but it still was extremely difficult for her to do that, to go through that. But she said she wouldn't trade it for the world, and she loves him so much, and he was absolutely meant to be in her family. But it was kind of a different situation because it didn't come about on its own because he was adopted, and it was immediate that they found that he had a problem, and he was homeschooled, so that they didn't have any special interventions. They just did it at home. I guess that is a special intervention. But yeah, that's pretty much my interview. Did I miss anything?
I think you did good.
I think you did good too. I found what the definition for rad is, if you guys want to know what it is.
Yes, please.
Okay, so is a condition found in children who may have received grossly neglected care and do not form healthy emotional attachment with their primary caregivers, usually their mother, before the age of 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was 21 months old when that happened. I wonder, does it say anything about where it falls under the special needs category by chance?
Let's see. It just says it just says it's an attachment disorder.
Okay. That might be one of the categories under special needs.
Yeah, I wouldn't see. What? Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say anything if it's with anything else. But
yeah,
because I know that they have there's tons of different types of attachment disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just it. But because he was such a young age and tossed between homes, it
Mm-hmm.
just majorly affected him, even though he's in a good family now, that it's interesting that even though he's been with that family since 20 months old, that he still is affected by it. Because you would think that he's been with the family for so long that he would realize that the family his family cares for him and that he's not going to get shipped away. They adopted him. Like, he's not going anywhere. Like, the family has been through so much with him, and why would they get rid of him if they've been together for so long? I don't know, it kind of makes me sad that they still have that fear, because I'm like, no, you're okay. You're not going anywhere. But
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the importance of attachment that they teach at an early age, because the damage can be done like so early on that will affect the rest of their life and the rest of their relationships. And I think that's why attachment disorders and at the same time like positive healthy attachments are being discussed more, and it is because of the lifelong effects that they can have.
oh yeah, because I'm taking an infant development class right now, my child 300 class, and we've talked about attachment and how important it is for children to have that, because it actually truly does interfere with their development.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't think it would, but even just like he had a hard time walking, like it interferes with everything that you don't think it actually would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had an obvious delay physically and cognitively, emotionally. All the domains were affected by this, by that lack of a good, strong, healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we want to just kind of do a reflection, I was going to say, listening to everybody, like something that I kind of took from it is just how this week talking about the multiple intelligences and how people have their different learning styles and what works best for them. I think it kind of, I mean, we found that out through the interviews, because even though I didn't interview myself and my own kids, I was thinking about my own kids and the people that I interviewed through this and just how different kids are, because my kids are in the Spanish immersion program in school. And I mean, they are older when they had the second language introduced to them. But my youngest in kindergarten is learning to read in kindergarten, and he's learning to read in English and in Spanish, and he's actually doing very well. Like, I'm surprised, because I was afraid when we put my first son in, I was afraid that it would be delays for him and also for my second, but it actually helps. It has helped improve, and it helps improve their math. I'm not sure why, but math is like a main one that they start teaching in Spanish first. And so all of math is done just strictly in Spanish, and they both are testing really high in their math in just the second grade and kindergarten. And so I think it's interesting because other kids have been pulled out of the program because it has been too confusing for them, and it has kind of slowed them down. Like the ones that were reading really well, and then they entered the Spanish immersion, they regressed a little bit, and so their parents took them out. And so I think it just kind of is a testament to how kids do learn differently. And because even talking, my friend that does have special needs kids, she feels like they were developing a lot the same as far as walking and talking. That development was the same for a lot of them. When listening to you guys, some of the people that you interviewed had different experiences where the development was delayed a lot with some of their kids. And so I just think it just goes to show that kids really are different, and you really do have to find what works best for the individual that you're working with, either as a parent or in education or working with special needs or anything. You really do have to just learn that child and what works best for them. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I completely agree, because I even see it in my family with the French and the English, and how I was spoken French too till I was about 5 years old, until I went to kindergarten. But the schools actually scared my parents, saying that they screwed me up for speaking 2 languages to me. And so they got scared and didn't speak 2 languages with my 2 next siblings. And then my baby brother, he got both languages, both French and English, but he didn't have any issues. And so it just, just in my family and like my extended family who speak just French and are learning English, or kind of a thing that learning is completely different per child. And because like my brother Tyler is very smart and intellectual, just like my dad, and learns so much quicker than my other 2 brothers and I. And just, or we each grab concepts of different subjects a lot easier than the other, just because I don't know. But it is interesting that everybody is different.
I agree.
Yeah, I've seen that with my sister as well. She's always struggled a lot in school, and except like in the arts, she's just excelled. So like my teacher, like at least like her teachers that I have noticed that have just really worked on trying to make things more visual for her, since she's such a visual learner. And she's just excelled so much more in classes where her teachers just really put in the time to kind of help accommodate for her learning style, since it's so much different than me from when I had them as my teachers. And so it's really interesting to see how different types of learning happens with people. Agree.
Yeah, and just thinking about my interview with the lady that I interviewed, she could have so easily just been well, I think that putting Jake in public schools will maybe help him get over it, in a sense, because I'll send him to public school every day and he'll come home and he'll see that I'm still here every single day, and maybe he'll just get over it. But she realized that if she would have done that, she would have probably caused more damage, more emotional trauma for him than helping the problem. And so she was well, I'm just going to tailor this to him and to his specific needs. And if she hadn't have done that, I don't know, who knows what else could have come about because of that. And so differentiation and helping children, knowing children to help them individually with specific needs is incredible, and it is imperative in child development. Just like with the language, the immersion is, or I don't know, is it the dual language for your children, Anne-Marie, is going really well, and that's super awesome. But and then we see examples of it not working, and so it's just that finding out what works best for all children. We talk this whole week, we've been talking about differences, how we're all different, and children are the exact same way. There's no two children. If children would have, we'll just take us. No two students in this class made the same score on that personality quiz. There's just no way. And the same thing goes for children. And we just have to find there we go. We just have to find what works best for them so that we can teach them in the best way we can.
Are we still having a delay?
Yeah, a little bit. It's like an echo.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, so our interviews and our reflection, does anybody have anything else that they want to add to it?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys are awesome and easy to work with.
I know. I've never been part of such a good group before. It's great.
Thank you all for helping, being willing to put in effort. Thank you so much.
Okay. So let's see, Maddie, do you have the recording on this?
Yeah, I have it. I'll just stop it and then I'll upload it. So that little reflection thing that we all just did, that was the 2-minute end thing that she's talking about?
I think so.
Yeah.
My understanding was just to go over our interviews and then kind of talk about what we saw as a whole from all of the interviews, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That was my understanding. If somebody else thinks something else.
That's what my understanding was too.
We're good.
Okay.
Okay, well then I'll end this and I'll upload it, and so we just have the group
The evaluation.
evaluation, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Hey,
Okay.
thanks, ladies.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.
Bye.